How much does it really cost to own a Tesla Model 3 for 5 years and 75,000 miles? And how does this cost compare to the popular Honda Accord Hybrid? Let's do the math to determine which of these vehicles has a lower 5-year cost of ownership. I'm John, and welcome to Cleanerwatt. Tesla's least expensive vehicle, the Model 3, has been extremely popular since its introduction, and it has been taking market share from other popular sedans like the Honda Accord, despite having a higher initial cost and with Tesla's recent price increases. However, as I've shown in past videos, make sure that you don't let the higher initial price of a Tesla Model 3 scare you away from owning one, because it might actually surprise you, as I'll show with the calculations we'll do in this video, that owning a Model 3 may be more affordable than you might think. In this video, we're going to be calculating the true 5-year cost with 15,000 miles driven per year for a total of 75,000 miles driven in this 5-year span. And we're going to look at purchase cost, energy cost, insurance costs, maintenance and repairs, depreciation, and in the end, we're going to compare the Standard Range Plus Model 3 to the Honda Accord Hybrid EXL trim level, and then we're going to compare the Model 3 Long Range All-Wheel Drive variant to the Honda Accord Hybrid Touring model. I chose these particular models to compare because the equipment is somewhat similar between these two vehicles, so we can have as close of an apples-to-apples comparison as is possible. I did a similar true cost comparison video in 2020, but a lot has changed since then with rising gas prices and also a series of Tesla price increases. Thus, the old video is somewhat obsolete and it's time for an update. So with that being said, let's dive into the calculations, starting with the initial purchase price of these vehicles. Right now, if you go to Honda's website, you can see that the Accord Hybrid is available in 4 different trim levels. As I just mentioned, we're going to be focusing in on the Accord Hybrid EXL and Hybrid Touring models, which are the closest we can get to the Model 3 when it comes to features and technology built into the vehicles. In order to get an actual market price for purchasing the Honda Accord Hybrid right now on the market, I went over to TrueCar.com, and as you can see, they say right now that a 2022 Honda Accord Hybrid EXL trim level with standard features is going for just a bit over $38,000 right now on the market. They also show that the Hybrid Touring model is going for just a bit over $41,000 on the market right now. When it comes to the cost of the Tesla Model 3, the Standard Range Plus Model 3 right now is $46,990 before you add taxes and fees. And the Long Range All-Wheel Drive version is $54,490 once again before adding taxes and fees. When you add the $1,200 delivery fee to the base price of the Model 3, you can see here how it compares to the Honda Accord Hybrid in these two different trim levels. So here's once again how this comparison is going to look. We're going to compare the Hybrid EXL Accord to the Model 3 Standard Range Plus, and as you can see, there is almost a $10,000 price difference between these two vehicles. We're also going to compare the Hybrid Touring model of the Accord to the Model 3 Long Range All-Wheel Drive version, and as you can see here, there's a bit over a $14,000 price difference. However, once again, despite the Model 3 costing more than the Accord for the initial purchase price, the low cost of ownership of an electric vehicle like a Tesla Model 3 actually makes up for a lot of, if not all, of this difference. So beyond purchase price, the next important factor that we need to talk about when it comes to a 5-year cost of ownership is the cost of energy. In order to get an up-to-date and accurate price for the cost of energy for these two vehicles, first of all, I went over to AAA's gas prices page on their website and found that the average price of gasoline per gallon in the United States right now is a bit over $4.23. When it comes to the cost of electricity in the United States, I went over to the U.S. Energy Information Administration website, and this article from March 1st of 2022 mentioned that the price of electricity in 2021 was 13.72 cents per kilowatt hour, and they estimated that in 2022, the average nominal price of electricity would be around 14.26 cents per kilowatt hour. Beyond energy prices, it's also important to know how efficient these vehicles are. So I went over to fueleconomy.gov and pulled up the efficiency numbers for each of these vehicles. And as you can see, although the Honda Accord Hybrid is quite an efficient vehicle for a gas-burning vehicle, compared to the Tesla Model 3, it's nowhere near as efficient as that vehicle. So using data from fueleconomy.gov and plugging in the custom fuel and electricity prices that I just mentioned, you can see here that the Tesla Model 3 costs quite a bit less per year because of the lower cost of electricity versus gasoline to drive 15,000 miles. Now, I do understand that this cost comparison would change a little bit if you charged, say, at a Tesla supercharger versus charging at home where electricity is cheaper. However, it's still going to be cheaper in most cases with an electric vehicle versus a gas-burning vehicle. For instance, I pulled up a trip on a betterrouteplanner.com going from LAX to Phoenix, which would be roughly a 374-mile trip. And if you pay around 28 cents per kilowatt hour with a Tesla supercharger, that trip would cost you somewhere around $26 or so. That same trip with a Honda Accord Hybrid could end up costing you somewhere over $42, so quite a bit more than supercharging with a Model 3. Also, if you install solar panels on your roof at home, that could actually give you free electricity from the sun, and you could possibly power your electric vehicle without paying for electricity. Another big important category when it comes to our 5-year cost of ownership is the maintenance cost of these vehicles. I do understand that maintenance costs can vary quite a bit depending on where you take your vehicle for service. For instance, if you do a lot of the maintenance yourself, it'll cost less than if you take it to a dealership, for instance. However, in order to calculate this, I found that Edmunds.com has already calculated the maintenance costs for 5 years for the Honda Accord Hybrid. So for our calculation, we're going to go ahead and use their maintenance cost information. Unfortunately, Edmunds does not have a maintenance cost calculator for the Tesla Model 3, so I did my own research and found that here are some of the things that you might have to do when it comes to maintenance with your Model 3. I've put down for year 1, replacing wiper blades and doing a tire rotation. Year 2, replacing cabin filters, wiper blades, replacing your tires, and taking your vehicle to Tesla for the 2-year service appointment. Then once again, year 3, you need to replace wiper blades and do a tire rotation. Year 4, cabin filters, wiper blades, tire rotation, and 2-year service once again. Year 5, wiper blades, and replacing tires. You can see nonetheless that likely it's going to cost less to maintain a Model 3 than the Accord Hybrid. Now, beyond maintenance, there could be some repairs that come up with these vehicles as well. Thankfully, a lot of these repairs will be covered by the vehicle's warranties. However, as you can see, the Model 3 actually has a stronger comprehensive warranty than the Accord Hybrid, and also a longer powertrain warranty as well. Nonetheless, while repair costs are actually really hard to calculate for these vehicles, to be fair, I'm going to go ahead and peg the repair costs for these two vehicles at $1,200 each, and that can cover incidentals that might come up during this 5-year period. Another really big important piece of the true cost puzzle is the depreciation amount of each of these vehicles. In 2017, a long-range Model 3 cost roughly $49,000. Today, that vehicle with 75,000 miles, according to kellybluebook.com, has lost around 35% of its value. In 2017, the Accord Hybrid Touring model cost around $35,000, and that vehicle today in 2022, once again according to Kelley Blue Book, with 75,000 miles, has lost around 42% of its value. So the Model 3 is holding its value better than the Honda Accord based on Kelley Blue Book's data. And in fact, although we're not going to use a lower number for the Standard Range Plus Model 3, if you look at current trends, a vehicle, a Model 3 Standard Range Plus right now, with 30,000 miles purchased in 2020, will have actually appreciated somewhere around 3%, according to Kelley Blue Book's data. It's also important to keep in mind that I'm not going to include this in my calculations, but as the world continues to transition to more and more electric vehicles, and as gas vehicles are less and less desirable, depreciation percentages for internal combustion engine vehicles could increase drastically in the next 5 years or so, while electric vehicles should be in demand for years to come. So with all that being said, I've shown you my reasoning behind these numbers. Let's look at the actual calculations for these vehicles. So as you can see here, I gathered all the calculations that we mentioned here for the Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus, and you can see there with sales tax, energy cost, insurance costs, financing cost, maintenance costs, repairs like we mentioned, and depreciation, the total 5-year cost of ownership driving 75,000 miles is around $38,000 or so, or 51 cents per mile. For comparison, the Accord Hybrid EXL trim level, once again, a 5-year ownership cost driving 75,000 miles, with all these factors included, has a cost of just a bit over $40,000 or 54 cents per mile. So based on my calculations, if you purchased each of these vehicles and sold them 5 years later, your total cost of ownership will likely be less with a Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus as compared to the Accord Hybrid EXL. When it comes to the Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive variant, with those same calculations, the total cost of ownership for 5 years, 75,000 miles, is just a bit under $43,000 or 57 cents per mile. And for comparison, the 5-year, 75,000 mile cost of ownership for the Accord Hybrid Touring model is somewhere around $42,772 or 57 cents per mile as well. So once again, if you purchased each of these vehicles, the Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive or the Honda Accord Touring, and you sold them after 5 years, very likely the actual 5-year cost of ownership would be pretty much the same or very similar between these two vehicles, despite, once again, the higher initial purchase price. Also, something that I didn't include in this calculation because it varies based on your geography, but very likely in your country or in your state or in your local city, there are some kind of financial incentives for buying an electric vehicle. For instance, according to electricforall.org, here are a few US states that have some pretty good EV incentives right now. So in conclusion, the Tesla Model 3 is a more premium vehicle with better technology, better performance, etc. over the Honda Accord. However, when you look at the true cost of ownership, despite the higher initial cost of the Model 3, the true 5-year cost is actually very similar or even possibly cheaper with the Model 3. When you add in the environmental benefits and also Tesla's supercharging network and the convenience of that, allowing you to take long trips, there really are less and less good reasons to purchase a gas vehicle anymore. Do let me know in the comment section below what you think about these calculations. Do you own a Tesla vehicle, and do you agree with my calculations? I also want to remind you that the 2022 Electric SUV Buyer's Guide is available, and you can purchase and download a copy at Cleanerwatt.com. It's a digital magazine formatted download that you can purchase and instantly view it and look at information for around 29 electric SUVs with a number of articles and also comparison charts. Find out more at Cleanerwatt.com or click the link in the video description. Well, thank you so much for watching this video all the way through to the end. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Patreon supporters who support me every month and help make this content possible. A special thank you to my performance supporters and also the other supporters listed on the screen. If you'd like to find out more about the Patreon community I've set up, I'll put a link in the description below. Thank you so much.